There's another more sophisticated way of telling naturally occurring testosterone in the body from exogenally administered testosterone. And this can be done for virtually any steroid drug, whether it's testosterone or Winstrol or Nandrolone or one of the other steroids. Because if you think about the source of synthetic, commercially available steroids, where do they come from? Plants. The ultimate source is plants. Not that plants make testosterone or estrogen, but plants, especially plants from the potato family, sweet potatoes, plants. This is what made steroids available back in the 40s for testing that eventually led to birth control drugs and the use of other steroid drugs. You're not going to get a lot of steroid drugs from bull testes, for example. It takes a couple tons of bull testes to get enough testosterone to be useful as a drug. But some people discovered that sweet potatoes of a certain genus that grow in Mexico produce steroids that can be chemically converted to compounds in huge amounts that you can then make testosterone, progesterone, and the birth control drugs. This is why Syntax that was founded in Mexico. A lot of this was done in Mexico. That was the source. Anyway, the source for a lot of these commercial steroids goes back to the plant. And the plant, you see, produces a somewhat different ratio of C13 to C12 because they all use carbon dioxide. And the isotopic ratio can be used to determine whether the testosterone that you're measuring is from the natural testosterone or was obtained from somewhere else. And that's how they do it. And this can be determined very easily by mass spectrometry because the difference between C13 and C12, obviously, is one atomic unit. So you can tell the difference. Designer drugs, designer steroids. This is the structure of, these are the structures of 4 of them. These are steroids that can be produced in the lab. They were reported in the literature by somebody. And somebody who had good chemical techniques, maybe somebody who flunked out of graduate school or something from chemistry, said, hey, I can go in the lab and make this stuff. And I have a drug like this one. This is one of the more popular ones, THG, that one can make in a few steps from commercially available steroids. And if you have the expertise to do this, you can do it. It's not too hard. And you can set up a company to do this. And that's exactly what some people did. Let's skip ahead to this company, BALCO, the Bay Area Laboratory Cooperative, whose sole purpose was to synthesize some of these designer drugs, make them available to athletes so that they wouldn't be detected. Why would they not be detected? Because nobody would suspect them. These were compounds that were reported in the literature somewhere in an isolated paper, and nobody cared about it. And then this compound would appear in the GC mass spec, but nobody would know what it is, and there was no standard to compare it with, so they just passed over it. It was not detectable. And this was great for a while. Then this book, Game of Shadows, came out after BALCO was exposed, coming out of the San Francisco Bay Area. Notice Barry Bonds on the cover. Barry Bonds, interesting case that I think has been resolved, but may not have been. Who knows? Barry Bonds was hauled before a grand jury a number of years ago because he was widely suspected of using one of these designer drugs, especially the THG, this drug here. Once its presence on the street was known, when the testing for it became available. And Bonds testified before a grand jury that his trainer rubbed this stuff on his muscles as a liniment. Bonds had no idea what it was, but he rubbed it on his muscles, and that's how he got to be so muscular. Well, if you look at Barry Bonds' pictures from his early days in his career, I mean, he wasn't exactly, Hercules. I mean, he had the build of an athlete, but not like he had in his later in his career. So there were wide suspicion that he had been given perhaps this agent, if not something similar, internally, and which built up his muscle mass. And he claimed ignorance. Apparently he got away with it because there was a trial last year in which he was cleared on all the drug-related charges, that he lied before a grand jury. In fact, the only thing that they could get him on, the one conviction that he had, was that he was evasive in his answers before the grand jury. And he played it smart, I must say. He had a good attorney who knew what was at stake. Hall of Fame nominee, things and all that stuff. And the only thing they could convict him on was evading the questions. There was an uproar in the press about that because the penalty that he incurred was, I think, so many days or so many months, maybe a month, of house arrest, which basically means they put something on his ankle, and if he leaves the house, a slap on the wrist is what it was. And that's where it stands today. Although some are asking for a retrial of that case because they said he had to be guilty of more than just that. But that's where we stand today. Anyway, I have a lot more, but it's 3 o'clock, and Dr. Comasaris is getting antsy back there. So I will quit, and thank you very much for your attention.